Hi, everybody. I'm here today with the Reverend Spencer Reece, a dear friend of mine, a dear friend of St. John's Church. You've got a fascinating story, and I just want people who have not heard your story to hear it from you.
I've been a priest, Episcopal priest, I think about 12 years now. And I started in San Pedro Sula, Honduras, where I worked in an orphanage for abandoned and abused girls. It's the only all-girl orphanage in a country of 250,000 orphans. Honduras is the poorest Spanish-speaking country in the Western Hemisphere, so there's a lot of orphans, a lot of, in the news, say in the last 5 years, where there were all these buses coming out of Central America, a lot of the people on those buses were the parents of these kids. Drawn out of Honduras because it was so poor, looking for work, and making the tough decision to leave their kids behind. So it's a country of abandonment, and I, again, like Jackson Heights, like Wyoming, like everything, it was just kind of like a fluke, like an accident. I had never been to Central America. I went there because when I was in seminary, we do something called CPE, Clinical Pastoral Education, and you're asked to work either in a maximum security prison or in a hospital. So I worked in a hospital. It was my last choice. Like, there were all these choices, and the last place I wanted to go was Hartford Hospital, which is a Trauma 1 inner city hospital, 1,000 beds, and I said to God, if you're going to send me anywhere, it can be anywhere but there. And so,
sure enough,
the only slot open was this place. So I was like, oh my God! I was born there in this hospital.
Wow.
My father was a doctor in that hospital. My mother was a nurse in that hospital. So I had a lot of history with this hospital, even though I wasn't eager to go there. I don't know, it seemed intimidating. But in I went, and it was pretty intense, as I expected. And there was a lot of gang violence in downtown Hartford, Latino and Black, Black gangs and Latino gangs. And the emergency room nurse told me that the Black gangs shot each other. I saw more young, dead African American boys than I ever want to see in my life again. It was very disturbing. And anyway, one night a young boy came into the emergency room with his mother. They were from Puerto Rico, and the boy had been stabbed in the chest like 25 times. Just the whole thing was all stab wounds. And they told me to be with the mom, and they worked on him all night. 18 years old, and the boy died. And the mother did not speak English, and I was dressed as a priest to minister to her and couldn't say anything. And
you knew no Spanish at this point?
I knew no Spanish. I was about 44, 45 years old, and I felt like a complete failure, a fraud. It just seemed like, well, what am I doing here? So I contacted my bishop in Southeast Florida, and I said, I need to learn Spanish. Like, somehow I've got to learn it, like some kind of program, I don't know what, but I've got to learn this language somehow. And he said, I have just the place for you. And I said, well, where would that be? And he said, it's in Central America. And I said, in my naivete, where is that exactly?
Where is Central America?
Yeah, well, I sort of knew where it was, but that's a bit of an exaggeration,
Yeah.
but I was pretty clueless. And then I didn't really know where Honduras was. He said, it's in Honduras. I said, where is that? And he said, well, get a grant and you'll learn more. And so I did.
So you're newly ordained at this point.
Yeah, so I got, what happened was I flew there on a plane, and everybody on the plane was shorter than the two of us, and a different color.
Right.
And I landed And I thought, what the hell am I doing? And they picked me up at the airport and they drove me to the compound, which is like a 16-foot wall with barbed wire and armed guards in downtown San Pedro Sula, which was the murder capital of the world at the time. 3 people were killed every day. And in I went, and I met these girls that were there, and it was, oh gosh, it just changed everything. I was changed by these young women that could not have been more unlike me. And I was just there 2 months, and at the end of the 2 months I thought, okay, 2 months is enough in all of this, with the burning plastic and the guns and the you can't drink the water, and I thought, okay, all right, okay, I'll learn Spanish at Yale in New Haven. That's what I'll do. So so as I'm leaving the orphanage, the girls had curfew and they were supposed to go to bed, and there was a girl that was waiting for me in front of my door, and I said, well, what are you doing here? And she said, well, we heard you're leaving tomorrow. And I said, I didn't even think they knew that that they were tracking my existence. I thought they had completely ignored me. And she said, no, we know that you're leaving tomorrow. And I said, well, and then she wouldn't leave. And I said, well, my luggage is packed, my bags are packed, and I'm going to be going. Well, she didn't leave. And I said, well, is there something you want to say to me? And she said, yes. And I said, what? And she said, don't forget us. And so these 3 words, she left, Gwendolyn, she left, I closed the door, I wept, and I didn't really know why. I was triggered emotionally by this request. I don't know. I grew up kind of, privileged in the Midwest, private school, buses, a mother that could have been a Jewish mom out of Central Casting. I mean, there was a lot of attention on me. So I had never, the idea that a kid would say, don't forget me, seemed just pretty shocking, I guess, or something. Yeah. So I didn't learn Spanish at Yale. I applied for a full...
And you didn't learn Spanish at the orphanage either?
I started. I was there for 2 months, but I applied for a Fulbright, and I to go back and live there.
Okay.
After
returning to Yale.
People at the end of seminary, people said, well, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm a finalist for the Fulbright, so I'm going to be going to Honduras. I'm going to learn Spanish, and this is what's going to happen to me. And like 2 weeks before graduation, I got a letter that said, dear Mr. Reece, we are sorry to inform you, but you haven't made the cut. So I didn't win the Fulbright, and I thought, oh boy, now what? And I was serving a parish in New York City, St. Luke in the Fields, and I got a call on my flip phone. And on the flip phone, I had won the Amy Lowell Traveling Grant for American Poets, which gave you money to go anywhere in the world and live for a year. So I called the bishop in Miami and I said, I didn't win the Fulbright, I'm not going to Honduras, but guess what just happened? And he said, well, you want to learn Spanish, so I think you need to go to Madrid, because I know somebody there, the Bishop of Spain for the Episcopal Church. So I said, okay, and I'd never been to Madrid or Spain, and within seconds I had a setup there. Wow. So with the grant money, I went to Madrid. And during that year, I reapplied for the Fulbright, because I had 1 more year as a graduate that I could apply for the Fulbright, and I won. So I spent a year in Madrid, and all I did with all my money was go into a basement and take Spanish classes. Like all my money went into this basement, and then I went and I lived in Honduras. When I won the Fulbright, I thought, okay, the Fulbright was to get the girls to write poetry about their lives and to put them into a book. And right before I left, I contacted two people that I knew. One was in Hollywood and one was a director, because I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we could make a documentary film? This just occurred to me, knowing nothing about any of that. And so the Hollywood person said no, and the director person said yes. He was totally fascinated, totally interested. And then when I arrived with the Fulbright, a film crew came with me. And we made this amazing film, which was a lot of work. And then when we were done with it, after the year was over, the fundraiser, who was supposed to raise the money, because, films cost money, quit. So then I started raising the money, which brought me to your doorstep.
Yep.
That's how I got here.
Thank goodness.
That's how I got here about 10 years ago.
Yep.
That was 10 years ago almost.
Was it really?
Yeah,
That's
because
when you and I first met.
Yeah. So I came here on another fluke because Betsy Murphy said, come to Jackson, which she was thinking was going to be restorative. And then I said, well, maybe I could just preach at the church and talk about the girls, because I need to raise money for this film. Little realizing that there was so much generosity and philanthropy here. And I raised more money in this town than I did anywhere. And last Sunday, I was able to really deeply thank everybody here, because it was in this room.
Yep.
And it was with 2 cowboy hats, and I left with like $40,000, which was more than I got anywhere else. I needed $300,000, and I got it.
Yep.
And then the bishop, I was supposed to be in Madrid one year, and the bishop called me somewhere in all of that and said, I want you to come back and work for me. And I thought, oh, okay. So then there went 7-8 years, and I lived in Madrid. The Spanish got a lot better, and then right before the pandemic, my mother got ill. She had a stroke, and I came back. And and then I was here in the pandemic with them, and then I went to work at Jackson Heights, and here I am. That was an intense job, because when you have a tragedy, like when you're in a church like this and the rector, who's sort of your leader, dies suddenly, and then the church closes. I mean, imagine that happening here.
Yep, and then the pandemic layered on top
so
of it.
7 months, no church, and then on top of it, the priest is dead.
Yeah.
So I learned so much there, because I had not been an American priest like you. I didn't know my way through the Book of Common Prayer in English, which, was perplexing to look at me, that I didn't know that after all this time. But so it gave me, it was really rich.
Yeah.
And I made a lot of friends there, lifelong friends, parishioners, and it was not easy to leave, but it was punctuated by the death of my father. My father died, it was my birthday, and then the next day I gave my final sermon, so it was really, and then on the next day I moved out of New York City with all my belongings put into a barn in Stonington, and that's where I find myself.
And then the next day you were in Jackson Hole, basically, right?
Yeah, then I was
here. Or maybe
here.
A couple days later.
I was here, yeah.
Yeah. And so, what's next?
I preach on Sunday.
I like that, one day at a time, right?
Yeah. I'll tell you this. I'm in a 12-step program. The day I landed in Jackson was the anniversary, was my sobriety date, which is September 1st, 1986. So I've been in program, which is really the foundation of my priesthood. That's it. Is that I'm sober, and I've been given this second chance. That's 36 years.
Yep.
And so in those meetings that are often in basements, they say, one day at a time, all the time, all the time, all the time. But it wasn't until Dad died. Dad died. I mean, I was called at like 1 a.m, so I didn't sleep that night. And as the day began in New York City, I thought, oh, okay, I think I finally get it. I think I finally get one day at a time. This is all we've got, is this day. Some things take a long time to get, like Spanish language and AA slogans. So I don't know. I've applied for a few jobs to be a rector in the Northeast. I hope I'm working by Advent.
Well, thanks, Spencer. Thanks for telling us your story.
Sure.
It's a fascinating story, and I just know that whatever these next days and years bring, that you're going to be an incredible blessing to wherever you go. You've been a blessing to me and a blessing to us here at St. John's. It's been so great to have you here for a month. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.